All right, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to raise the awareness of trauma and to support and inspire new trauma therapists just starting out on the trauma-informed journey. I do that with my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0, my online courses and workshops, and the Trauma Therapist newsletter. If you're a therapist of any kind and you work with individuals who've been impacted by trauma, I invite you to head on over to my website at thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. All right, let's get started. All right, so I'll read your bio and then we'll just jump right in.
Sounds great.
Okay, all right. So I do have to say my 6-year-old daughter, who is home now from school, is in the other room. So I feel like I'm walking on a tightrope walk doing this, but she might knock on the door for some reason.
And she can come right in and we can make her part of the discussion about parenting and emotions and trauma and intergenerational trauma.
That's the next episode. All right, Hilary, here we go. We are recording. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. I am very excited to have back Hilary Jacobs Hendel. Hilary, welcome.
Thank you, Guy. Thanks for having me back.
All right. So Hilary received her BA in biochemistry from Wesleyan University, a DDS from Columbia, and an MSW from Fordham University. She is a certified psychoanalyst, an AEDP psychotherapist, and supervisor. She's also one of the co-developers of the Emotions Education 101 Turnkey curriculum, as well as Emotions Education 101 8-week class on Zoom. She's passionate about taking the complex world of emotions and making them easy to understand and work with for greater peace, calm, and confidence. She's also the developer of the Change Triangle tool for emotional health. So, wow. Busy much?
The book, which is the whole enchilada.
Well, we're going to talk about the book here, which is called the award-winning book, actually, self-help book on emotions called It's Not Always Depression, Working with the Change Triangle to Listen to the Body, to Discover Core Emotions and Connect to Your Authentic Self. It's published by Random House. In addition, she also published articles in New York Times, Time Magazine, Oprah, Salon, among others. Wow. All right. So first of all, welcome back. Share with our listeners, before we get going here, where you're from originally and where you are currently.
Absolutely. I am born and raised in New York City in Manhattan, embarrassingly on the Upper East Side. And then I had a short stint in Memphis, Tennessee for 6 years, then ended up back on the Upper West Side.
Wow.
And then I married a guy in the second marriage 20 years ago that was based in Connecticut, and he had a cute little house on coastal Connecticut. So that's where I am right now.
Awesome. All right. So let's jump in here. Before we started recording, you said there are kind of other things that on the agenda that you want to talk about. What are those things?
Well, since we last spoke, I think we spoke around the time the book was published, and so you may remember, or people that have know me, that I became passionate about spreading emotion education to the public after I learned about emotions in my training, that I had stumbled upon this whole body of work that was really the trauma therapies, AEDP and EMDR and somatic experiencing. And before that, I had never learned about emotions and the body, which was so conspicuous to me because I really had the best medical and psychological education that money can buy. And so I hadn't learned that in my formal education. When I learned about emotions and working in my body, not staying up in my head, which was where I lived, it really transformed my mental health. I started writing for the public because my pet peeve that nobody's getting emotion education really turned into a moral outrage, as I like to say, and I began writing. And so then I had this lucky experience where an agent read this article in the Times that I wrote, and I got asked to write a book. What did I want to write on? And it was this triangle, which was it's a basic upside down triangle, but it was a tool that I found I'd never, and to this day have not found a useful tool to understand myself and others. And it's universal. Every human being falls on this triangle of understanding the way we block emotions with defenses and anxiety and inhibition, and what the core emotions are that we're supposed to be paying attention to, and all the good things that happen. So that's all been the same since we've spoken. And meanwhile, the book continues to sell all over the world. It sold about 100,000 copies, which I'm
Wow.
so excited and so proud of. And what I did in the meantime is I developed a curriculum, because if you're going to be, the book teaches emotions, but it's really, can we, ideally, I think emotions in the next 50 years, hopefully way before then, will be taught as basic education in high school, along with reading and writing, because it's so
Why do you think they're not?
I think we live in an emotion phobic, completely dysfunctional society. And people are frightened by emotions because the actions that emotions cause are destructive often. And so it's a catch-22. We need to understand and work with emotions to shift them from destructive actions, like what causes trauma, child abuse and child neglect and everything else, to constructive, not only to prevent and to prevent trauma, but for people to understand from the get-go what causes trauma and how you heal it. So I feel like the emotion education that I'm providing is the bedrock, the fundamental beginning of healing and recovery and prevention. I know that to be true.
Okay, let's get into that. Before we do, you said, or even I read in your bio, that you had a BA in biochem from Wesleyan, DDS from Columbia, Jesus, and there was like no emotions in there. Wasn't until you started the other trainings that you learned about them. What was it about emotions that you were like, oh my gosh, this is, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't even in psychoanalysis. Of course, when you're doing psychoanalytic therapy, CBT, and all these kind of more the mainstream, having been a patient for many years in psychoanalysis and in various types of therapy, you hope to sort of stumble on an emotion and have it come up and out and feel a catharsis or feel some relief. And that was the extent of really there was no formal education in emotion. So what that looked like was literally understanding what is an emotion, understanding that emotions aren't heady things, they're body-based. And so the first epiphany was one that you can't control emotions, because I was raised to think that if I just was strong enough and tough enough, that no matter what I did, no matter what happened to me, I should be able to prevail and be okay. And that's a myth, that I should be able to overcome my emotions. So with emotions, once you learn about how the brain works, they get triggered without conscious control, because they get triggered. It's really interesting, because it's now, I never understood like the whole idea about the five senses, hearing and seeing, but what's interesting is the five senses are how we are unconsciously perceiving the environment. And those, our eyes and our ears and our sense of touch, really go right into the middle of the brain, into the limbic and emotional system. And from there, if something has enough sort of power to it to elicit an emotion, it will light up that part of the brain. And when the emotion is triggered, it will then light up the lower levels of the brain and connect to the vagus nerve and the body, because this was another aha moment. The purpose of emotions is to make our body move in these adaptive ways for survival. That's why we evolved to have emotions over thousands of years. So it's only after we have an emotion that we know we're having an emotion. So you can't control it. Therefore, why should we judge ourselves for our emotions, which everybody does all day long, every day?
Right. Say that again. The purpose of emotions is to make our body move.
Yes.
Talk more about that.
Yes. So the example that I always use is that everyone can relate to is if a wild beast just busted into both of our rooms right now, we would be
like running. My little daughter.
Like the little daughter, that
right.
the little that made sense.
Right.
That we would be running there would be absolutely no thought about it.
Right.
The danger would come in and our legs would move and our body would know what to do. It would pump blood to our heart and our lungs and our muscles so that we could escape. Then once we were safe and we could sort of think about what happened, we would be able to know we were in danger. And the feeling that we're having is fear. And the fear did its job. It made us run. If we had to think, if you and I had to say, oh my God, something's coming in, I think, we should run, Guy. It looks like we should run. We'd be eaten by then.
Right.
So it's this idea that emotions are there on purpose to be rapid actions. And each of the core emotions, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, joy, excitement, and sexual excitement, the ones that I named in the change triangle, it's not that they're the only emotions, but they're the ones that I see get us into most trouble in terms of our blocking them. And they're the most easy to understand. They're the basic categorical emotions. Each of those emotions has a separate program with a separate action that is meant to be adaptive for surviving and thriving. We allow it to inform us.
Right. So interesting. If you think that we spend so much time and our society is built upon this idea of ignoring or suppressing our emotions.
Right.
When in fact they're really for adaptive purposes and to help us move in a sense.
Exactly. And not only is it not adaptive to block emotions, but when we bury emotions, well, first of all, in trauma, that's exactly the definition is that our capacity to deal with our emotions has been exceeded. One, because of the intensity of the emotion coming up, and two, because we're too alone. We are wired as human beings to help each other regulate and soothe. And so when we bury our emotions, whether we do it a little because we're lucky and we didn't have a lot of emotional challenges, or we do it a lot because we had so many wounds and traumas, the bearing of emotions itself is what causes these symptoms that we all have now, chronic anxiety, depression. And then from there, many of the disorders in the DSM are really trauma symptoms from buried emotions, where we have to break up our mind into different parts to be able to manage the conflicts of, for example, having a parent that we're wired to go to for safety and having that same parent in an abusive situation be scary. And so we have this conflict between this impulse to move forward to a parent for care and another impulse to protect ourselves from danger. And how does a little child deal with that conflict? They can't.
Right.
So the mind has to kind of split apart.
Wow. Just a reminder, I'm speaking with Hilary Jacobs Hendel. The book is called It's Not Always Depression, Working with the Change Triangle to Listen to the Body, Discover Core Emotions, and Connect to Your Authentic Self. And now, recently you have a curriculum on this, and this can be accessed where? At your website?
Yeah, so the HilaryJacobsHendel.com, I really built to be a hub of emotion education with largely free resources for the public to use and share. Sort of like the idea is like a grassroots movement to educate the public in ways that are, and to educate in ways that are practical and relatable, and I don't use jargon. A lot of therapists read my book and I'm sure learn AEDP from the book and take my classes, but it's really geared so that maybe a late teen, 15, 16 and up can understand it. The book is a basic emotion education. The title is sort of wonky, like, okay, it's not always depression. What does that mean? And what it means is it's being human and life and how life affects us emotionally and what to do with those emotions. And the book and the blog and all the resources on my website are really a lot of stories, because we're all human beings. When it comes to emotions, we're really all the same. On the basic level, and we need the same things and we have to process them in similar ways. And so it's relatable. So on the website, there's a free curriculum that's a 12-class curriculum that was developed by a colleague of mine. This is kind of an interesting story. Heather Sanford who's just a lovely, lovely human being, was practicing AEDP up in Ithaca. She read my book when it first came out. She was working with very traumatized people and for the state, and developed a curriculum that was sort of a step up after they're getting out of psychiatric hospitals and intensive. And then she contacted me. The curriculum was based on my book, and she used my resources from the website, the blogs and the videos I make on the Change Triangle YouTube channel. And she said, hey, I've been doing this thing. And I was like, whoa, that's great. Let me take a look. I'd love to see what you're doing, because I'm not a teacher. I didn't have teacher training in that way. And then she said, I'd like to start teaching a group. I love groups, and I'd love to do a group for the public. And do you want to rewrite the curriculum for a public to start to run these groups? So we wrote a second curriculum together. So I offer a free 12-class curriculum that anybody can take, and it's sort of a lighter curriculum. It's the sort of basic education and just reading some stuff and playing around with emotions. And then there's the curriculum that we sell, but it's pretty inexpensive for, we really wanted this to be affordable to get out. And that one is more to teach here's the problem with teaching emotions. And this is why I think another reason why we don't see a lot of emotion education out there is you can't think your way through an emotion. As much as that would be great, right? That's the worst news. If we could think our way through emotions, we'd think about them and solve problems, but we don't. We get caught up in the head, and then we start to obsess and ruminate. You have to experience an emotion. So to teach emotions, you have to, what we've done with this curriculum is each 90-minute class, and people can rearrange the curriculum and do it the way they want to do for their communities and make it fit love. But basically, in each class, we give a little experience so they can have. So we're guiding together, creating a compassionate, safe, non-judgmental, holding environment to say, just notice what's happening in your body when you think of something sad, for example. Then I teach for 20 minutes in the curriculum. It's on video, or I give the slides and people can teach it themselves. And then I teach on sadness and what is sadness? How do you experience sadness? How do you move through sadness? What happens when you get stuck? All these things. And then at the end of the class, we break up into a small group and we do another experiential exercise. And then after each exercise, we talk about, so people can have the experience of sharing and talking about emotions, because there's no place in society where it's sanctioned to really talk about emotions. And then you get to hear how different people experience things, and it takes the shame out of it all. And it's very touching and beautiful. And people really say that in 8 classes, they get years of therapy. And also they get therapy that they never had after being in psychoanalysis for 20 years. That it's just.
No, is this for the public and therapists as well?
Yes. So the class that I teach, the next class in September that Heather and I teach together, is open to everybody 18 and over. Anybody can.
That's going to be a live class.
It's a live class. We
starting in September. Yeah. Okay.
It meets from Wednesdays from 3 to 4:30.
Where's the link for that? Because I don't put that on the show notes page.
It's all on my website. There's a tab on my website that says Emotions Education 101.
Yes.
That has the class.
The 8-week one.
It's the 8-week class. It's where you can also buy the curriculum. You get like a Dropbox download with a ton of stuff that you have everything you need to start teaching, or you can just play the videos and we teach it, and you just person holding the group.
Got it. Okay.
And
I'll put the link up there.
Also have a Train the Trainer. It's a 4-hour webinar that teaches therapists and coaches how to deliver the information, how to create space, because the class is, you have to go so slow when you're working with emotions to keep anxiety low. And because you have to go so slow to begin to perceive what's happening in your body, like a warmth or a tightness or energy. And we're just getting to know in a gentle way what's happening, and to see how emotions work. And we're working that triangle, moving from disconnected and defended states through anxiety, guilt, and shame in manageable, we don't talk about our traumas. It's not a trauma processing because we don't want to trigger other people. It's really the exercises are gentle and just designed to evoke enough emotion to get a feel, so people don't have to be so frightened, right? That's the leap of faith that I remember when I first went to an AEDP training, and we broke up into groups to do experiential exercises. And somebody first asked me when I said I was anxious, if I could notice the anxiety in my body. And I was like, what? If I do that, I might explode or lose control.
Right.
But I trusted the person. I trusted that somebody knew what they were talking about. I turned into my anxiety.
Yeah.
And it went down and not up. And it was another revelation.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds incredible. Hold on here, my daughter. Yes, Gemma.
What a pretty name.
Come here. What? Hurry up. I'm right in the middle of an interview. Want to say hi? Come on, say hi. And we have. She wants to say hi with her hand. All right, go say hi. Reach in front.
Let's see the hand.
She wants to see your hand.
How many fingers are on that hand?
How many
3?
fingers are on your hand? Come here. Just say hi, and then you got to go back because I want to finish. Okay, because then I'm going to take you to the store.
Okay, look at her.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me see how beautiful you are.
Come on, she wants to see you. Come on. Come on. Oh my gosh, she's so shy. Come on, would you get over here?
I'm shy too. Believe it or not. Nobody believes that. I'm a shy introvert. Oh my God, you are so beautiful. Oh,
Do you have a question?
No.
Okay, when you go out, let me finish. Okay, and then we're going to go
When am I going to be done?
in about 10 minutes.
Okay.
All right, good job, Gemma.
we shouldn't edit this out.
I'll probably keep it in. All right.
Should
Yeah.
I, if you can let me screen share, I can show a picture of this triangle.
Oh, okay. Okay, hold on. Gemma wants to say hi to you. Here,
Okay.
Come over here. You got to come over here, though. Come over here.
Okay.
Just come over here. Come over here. All right, but you got to get in here. You got to get over here. Come here. Hurry up. Gemma, you got to come. Hurry. Okay, look at the camera. Okay, say hi.
Do you know what we're talking about, Gemma? A very weird subject. You want to know? We're talking about feelings and emotions.
Why?
What do you think about that?
I don't know.
I
Okay,
know. I didn't
go.
know either.
Let me finish up. Oh my gosh, that's the first time that's ever happened in like 700 interviews.
She's so beautiful.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So this sounds really, really awesome to me. And it sounds, I mean, given the fact that a lot of therapists listen to this, why do you think this would be? I mean, I think it's a no-brainer, but why do you think, in your words, why this would be useful for therapists?
Yeah, I would say several reasons. One, it is fundamental that therapists and clients alike have a basic education in emotions. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me if do you know what I'm saying? If therapy is about getting to know oneself and creating insight into one and trying to create change, there you have to deal with emotions. Emotions cause us all the troubles. So the fundamental education in emotions, without it, just that's why I thought this was a no-brainer. It makes no sense. I don't know why I haven't sold a million copies of the book, but again, emotions is a tough sell.
Yeah.
And so that's one reason. The other is that it turbocharges therapy. I've heard, I get letters every day. That is the thrill of this, and through social media, that it just makes the hugest difference in the world. So it turbocharges the therapy. It helps both the therapist and the client kind of relax. It like de-shames, which is shame is another, it's a very important emotion. Therapists do not get hardly any like emotion education on core emotions. They get too little on shame, which is pervasive in a therapeutic room. And therapists need to learn how to work with it in very specific ways that I illustrate in the book. that have to do with a lot of Richard Schwartz work on IFS, but this idea of like how to de-shame really quickly and how to connect. So there's no downside to an emotion education, and every possible upside that I could imagine.
Right.
And I have to say personally, I became interested in it by the time I found AEDP and I switched careers from dentistry. I had 2 clinical depressions where I went on Prozac for 6 months. It was stress related. I think one was when I was getting divorced, and another was when my ex-husband was getting remarried. And again, they're like dealing with like the stress of aloneness and 2 young children. And I didn't know, but at that time, I didn't really realize, I didn't know at all that depression was caused by underlying emotions. Now I do, but at the time I could just try to de-stress a little bit. It taught me that I can't do everything I want. I really have to tune into myself. But then since I had the education in emotions, and since I started processing emotions, both in and out of therapy, I haven't had another episode of depression. And I never will because of that. That's not to say that people that have a lot of genetic tendency toward depression will experience it differently, but it certainly has no downside, no matter what diagnosis, to understand how to be with emotions, to really work hard to welcome them, to get to know them, to use them as data and not as a threat, even though they are painful. And the goal is not to get rid of emotions or stop having them, but when you're afraid of something, it's that much more painful. So one of the ways that I teach, like core emotions are wave-like. And so when I help guide someone, when I see sadness and I say, can we slow way down and honor this feeling? And can you tell me how you know that there's sadness coming up in your body? When you focus on it, it will start to build. And like all pure core emotions, they come up, they crescendo, and then they go down and you feel better. And I liken it to stubbing your toe, that when you first stub it, there's no pain, right? And then it's coming and it's going to build, and you don't know how high it's going to build. And then it's going to get better. And that type of wisdom, if we can take to an emotion without acting on it. And I think that's another point before we get off that I just want to clarify. Teaching emotions and validating emotions is not permission to wear emotions on our sleeve or to act out badly or as an excuse for acting out badly.
Right.
Learning what an emotion is and to experience it is a completely internal experience. The last step is to bring reason and logic on board, and then to be able to think through, how am I going to use this emotion for my well-being and for the well-being of my relationships and my life, to move forward in the direction that I have thought through and want to do. And so we're talking now about experiencing emotions, not behaving badly. In fact, we're learning that when you learn to focus in on the body, you're doing so many things at the same time. Besides detoxifying the feeling, you're slowing everything down so that in a triggered moment, let's say with your wife, where she really annoys you and you might ordinarily have gotten into a fight because you would have gotten defensive or called her something like stupid. In these moments, people develop the ability to pause and know what's happening as it's happening. It doesn't go away, but you can, okay, I've just been triggered. I'm enraged at my wife. I know that I have to really work hard now to control the impulse. That's normal and natural, right? If we feel attacked, we want to lash out. Anger is a primitive program. It wants to fight. It wants to be mean. But luckily, we're born with rational logic and impulse control that we can pull back, work with that, reframe it, and with a tremendous amount of work. This change triangle is a tool to be used over the rest of our lives. It's a fundamental basis of how to work with our emotions for the rest of our life. And it's not perfect, it's a practice like mindfulness, like meditation, but I would call it mindfulness with a map, because instead of going into the spaces between our parts and feelings, we can actually work with them to process our wounds and traumas, again, on our own sometimes, with a coach, with a therapist.
Wow. I love this. And I love the way you're approaching it. I appreciated you saying that, you move slowly through this. It sounds to me, Hilary, like this is almost a curriculum in being human, which is really amazing to me. People can, so you've got this live workshop coming up when?
September is when we're finishing. We have one more class of the 8-week class next week.
Okay.
Tie it all together, but September 7th, Wednesday, it's every Wednesday from 3 to 4:30 p.m., which for better or for worse is when it is.
Okay.
That's September 7th. And then we have a new train the trainer for people where it comes with the curriculum. And actually until the end of June, I don't know when this is going to show, but until the end of June, we have an early bird special on the curriculum and the 4-hour webinar. And that's going to be in October. And then we'll see what happens next year. I don't know if I'll still be teaching it in 2023. I may just hand it over to Heather.
Awesome. Well, it sounds amazing. I'd love to help you promote this, by posting it up on my Facebook page also. What's the best way for people to reach out to you, Hilary, as we kind of close out here?
Oh, I'm very, very accessible. I am everywhere in social media because that's the best way to educate people, as much as I am not a fan of social media. And on my website, which I hope people will just poke around and check out. On the footer is my email address and my phone number. But the best way to stay connected is to sign up for my blog. Once a month, I send out an email through MailChimp, and it's got my newest article that I get inspired to write. I just published yesterday something on feeling like a fraud and insecurities with probably way too many tools, but I can't help myself from just wanting to give a selection because everybody's different. And
Sure.
And next month, I think I'm going to write about my journey to change careers and leave dentistry because it was one of the biggest traumas. My family went berserk. So I like to write about myself a lot because I know me.
Sure. Hilary, you are a delight to talk to and so inspiring. I mean, I love talking to you, what you're sharing here. And it is not obviously just vital for us as humans, but I think it's really, really integral for therapists.
Integral.
Yeah. And I'd love to have you back at a later date. We can continue the discussion or any other discussion, but thank you so much for coming on here and for dealing with my little spicy peanut girl.
Spicy peanut.
Right.
Peanuts. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so thrilled that we.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening and supporting this podcast. And if you'd like to join the hundreds of other therapists who are each month keeping up to date and informed and inspired about what's going on in the world of trauma, I'd love to invite you to head on over to the Trauma Therapist newsletter. That's the traumatherapistnewsletter.com.